Dr. Jim Loomis and Caryn. Welcome to the Plant Trainers Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
We're very excited. We've got 3 boxes going for those of you watching on YouTube today, and we're welcoming Dr. Jim back. He's been on the show before, and Caryn, it's your first time, so we're super excited. Welcome. Since Jim has been here before and he knows about our moment of gratitude, why don't you go first?
All right. Well, I'm really thankful and have gratitude for you all having us on the show, and for also being, part of this movement, this plant-based movement, because it's so important. And the more voices, the better. And you guys have been such a strong voice in this movement, and I'm grateful for you all, and grateful to be part of it as well, and grateful to be on the show.
Oh, thank you. Back at you. Thank you so much. Caryn, what's your moment of gratitude today?
Jim is such a suck up. Oh my God. No, I truly this is, and I mention this to my classes and to clients all the time, and I really am truly grateful that finally lifestyle medicine is a true boarded practice. So now that people don't think that we're really that crazy anymore for prescribing plants and a plant-based diet and a plant-based lifestyle. So it is a real thing. Dr. Loomis is a board certified, board trained lifestyle medicine provider, and the population is growing. So I'm very grateful for that.
I do see it growing even amongst the young people. As a high school teacher, I see more and more students turning to a plant-based lifestyle, which is really cool and interesting. But there are still so many people who just don't believe it, think it's another one of those fad things, and don't really. They think the research is not really true, or the evidence isn't really there, and they don't really get it. So there's still a very big population, I think, that need to learn. And but it is promising, and there is a lot of positive vibe about it going around. So thank you both for being here and for what you're doing.
Thank you.
And it's interesting that that's one of the reasons we started the Doc and Chef, which is to address exactly that. This idea we can all have our own opinions, but we can't have our own facts. And there's so much kind of mythology out there, and kind of bro science around things like protein and soy. And so that's exactly why we started this project, is to really present the evidence, and present the science, and then help people translate that science to your plate of food with a healthy recipe. And that's really what Doc and Chef is all about. And that's what our YouTube channel is. And now we're doing live shows, and it's exactly that, Adam, to really help people understand that the science is there, the evidence is there. And we view it as part of our mission to share that evidence, and share not only the what to do, but why you're doing it. Why are you putting these plants on your plate from a health standpoint?
Mm-hmm. And why are the plants that we thought were good 10 years ago still good? And we're going to get into that in a little
Right.
bit.
Yes,
but I'm really interested to hear of how your little match was made. Like were you swiping for plant partners online, and you swipe left, swipe right? Like how did you guys come together?
I'm going to let Caryn tell this story, because it's it's.
Well, I will give you the Reader's Digest version.
You're going to give
and I'll also keep it PG. So Jim I'm in St. Louis and Jim is in DC. And I started the little business called STL Veg Girl, STL for St. Louis, back in 2008. And in 2011, I started teaching classes at several places around town, and ended up at one of the grocery stores here in town. It's kind of a higher end grocery store that has teaching, kitchen, and all this great stuff. And I was teaching there, and then Jim had a practice in St. Louis for about 35 years, and he went plant-based. So he was also teaching there. Different times we didn't know each other, but my students would say to me, "Hey, do you know Dr. Jim Loomis?" And his students would say to him, "Hey, do you know this Caryn Dugan of STL Veg Girl? You guys should do some classes together, whatever." And so finally, one day I had the oomph. I'm like, I'm going to send him an email. I was really, I was kind of nervous because he was this big doctor dude. And I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if he's probably not going to want to know me. So it took me a long time to write this email to him. And I remember even the first line and all this stuff. And so I sent it off to him, totally nervous. And he didn't get back to me. And days and days and days. And I was like, oh, okay. I see where this is. He thinks he's too good for me. Got it. Message received. So months go by and he still hasn't said anything to me. Jerk. And so I went to the very first, now it's the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, PBNHC, the Plant Nutrition Conference. And back then it was called the North American because they didn't know how big it was going to be. Anyway, so this was 2013, I believe. And everybody's there. I mean, like everybody who you know is there, right? It was one of the first conferences. And it was the first night. There was some kind of like mixer going on before the conference really got started. And I'm standing talking with somebody and I hear in the back behind me somebody laughing. He goes, hi, yeah, hi, Jim Loomis. And he's talking to somebody else. And I thought, and so I went up to him and look at him laughing. He's such a jerk. I went up to him and I go, hi, Dr. Loomis. I'm Caryn Dugan. And it was just like the blood went out of his face. I go, you are a pretty big hole. And I did. I called him out. And then we started talking and
The rest is history.
He went on his way. I went on my way. The next morning I got up, I worked out, I went into breakfast and I saw him at a table and he waved me down with his, he was reading the paper and I sat next to him and the friendship started.
Aw.
Yeah. But I was called a couple of names that we shall not repeat here. And,
we don't have the swearing capabilities for our show.
Right. But then, then we started teaching classes together, and then Caryn opened the Center for Plant-Based Living and asked me to be her, well, she appointed me her medical director, let's just say that. Guess what? You have a new title. And so we've been great friends and colleagues since. And out of that friendship was born the Doc and Chef. We were at a conference speaking together in Midland, Texas, a couple of years ago, and we're talking and realized we were getting the same questions. Her from a culinary standpoint, me from a medical standpoint. Where to get your protein on a plant-based diet? Is soy going to give me man boobs? Are eggs really bad? What about olive oil and fat? And on and on and on. And the light bulb went off. Why don't we start a YouTube channel and kind of marry the two together? There's a lot of great doctors talking about this stuff, the science. There's a lot of great chefs making meals, but there was really nobody who was marrying the two together. And so that's how this little side project, the Doc and Chef, got started.
Well, I absolutely love it. And I wanted to talk a little bit about kale today because, I tend to get my information from good sources. And I hate to admit it, but I tend to stay out of a lot of the plant-based Facebook groups these days, because sometimes there's just so much going on and like, guys who are listeners, I know it's not our listeners, but there's like a lot of vegan hatred.
It's a lot of trolling.
There's a lot of trolling and a lot of, we're judging people for what they're doing or not doing when we don't know where they've come from. So I kind of got out of it for the negativity. And then I decided to pop back in one day and I'm like, what do you mean you can't eat, people shouldn't eat kale? I'm like, where is this coming from? And it was just the comments about the selenium, the comments about the goitrogens, like I couldn't comprehend. So I wanted to start there today. Let's talk about selenium first. Explain to people what it is, why it's good, and why it could be bad.
So this is a perfect example of the kind of issues we're trying to address, right? So selenium. So selenium is a micronutrient mineral that comes from the soil, and we need selenium for a lot of things. But one of the things it does is it helps. We need it for thyroid metabolism. We need it to help us make thyroid hormone. And people that are deficient in selenium, are at increased risk for thyroid disease. But you don't see that very often, actually. It's mainly in areas of the world where the soil has become deficient in selenium. And it's very easy to get enough selenium in a plant-based diet. Caryn's going to talk in a minute about some great sources of selenium. We need about 55 micrograms a day. Now, you can get too much. The upper limit's about recommended no more than about 400 a day, somewhere in there. And high levels of selenium can create toxicity. It can cause some hair loss and nausea and diarrhea and fatigue. And there's some evidence it may increase your risk for prostate cancer. But it's a necessary nutrient, and you know, it's necessary for healthy thyroid function. However, again, there's the studies that have been done looking at selenium intake and thyroid function, especially in North America, where there is plenty of selenium in the soil, that has really not shown any association as a risk factor, if you will, for thyroid disease.
So I would think that people who have thyroid disease or already have that thyroid disease before they find kale, right?
Right.
It's coming from what they started eating
right.
before they found the kale. But how much kale would you need to eat, or how much, like Caryn will talk to us about, you know, what are some good sources and how can we make them palatable in a minute. But like for kale, for example, how many swimming pools worth of kale do you have to eat before you're ending up in the ER?
Right. Well, so that's a different issue in some ways. So the issue with kale is that some people view it as a goitrogen, so it leads to thyroid deficiency, hypothyroidism, which is low thyroid. So this kind of idea got kind of put into the medical community based on a single study in 1928, where they fed rabbits a bunch of cabbage and their thyroid enlarged. So they said, oh, well, we shouldn't be eating a lot of cabbage because it'll make our thyroids not work right. And so that's kind of been for the last, 60, 70, 80 years, that idea has kind of been perpetuated. And it's true that whole class of medications, broccoli, kale, the cruciferous vegetables, have some compounds called thiocyanates or isothiocyanates. And they can inhibit, so we need iodine, which we can talk about in a minute, but we need iodine to make thyroid hormone. And these thiocyanates and isothiocyanates can inhibit the uptake of iodine into the thyroid gland. So theoretically, it can cause a problem. There's been one case report of an 88-year-old woman who ate 3 pounds of raw bok choy a day and developed hypothyroidism. There have been no studies in humans whatsoever that have ever shown that the normal consumption of cruciferous vegetables, whether it be kale or broccoli or cabbage or whatever, has any adverse effect on our thyroid function. And in fact, these cruciferous vegetables like kale have compounds called sulforaphanes, which have been shown to have profound anti-cancer effects. I mean, they're probably one of the most potent anti-cancer foods you can eat. And Caryn can talk about kind of what that looks like on your plate of food here in a second. But again, it's just one of these kind of mythologies that are out there that oh, you've got thyroid disease, you shouldn't eat kale. It's just not true. It's just not true. And so, and again, it's just again, back to selenium, the few people that have shown selenium deficiency who did show its evidence of thyroid disease, they were also iodine deficient. And so that's a whole nother topic, right? So iodine, and Caryn's going to talk about where iodine comes from. We need iodine for our thyroid function. It's all connected, right? So the selenium, the iodine, we need both of those. We need the selenium to bind to the iodine to make the proteins that help us absorb it into the thyroid function and to the thyroid to make the thyroid hormone. So iodine comes from dirt. We used to not have to worry about it. There was lots of iodine in the dirt, but we've been farming the same dirt for a long time. And so the soil in the U.S. has become depleted of iodine. The government recognized this in the 1920s, 1930s, started to subsidize the salt companies to iodize salt. So Morton's table salt is iodized. And we need about 150 micrograms a day. But the problem is many people who have adapted a healthier diet, whether it be plant-based or not, have stopped using iodized salt. So they're using pink Himalayan salt or sea salt, still sodium, but it doesn't have iodine in it. So most of the people who So I see that actually fairly regularly. People come in with abnormal thyroid functions. It's not because they're too much kale, it's because they're iodine deficient. And all they need to do is take either a supplement or Caryn's going to talk about some of the foods that have iodine in it. But the people with the selenium deficiency also are iodine deficiency. So the two together compounded thing. So, again, as long as we're eating foods that have selenium, we're getting enough iodine in our diet, eat all the kale and broccoli you can stomach. Is the bottom
Wait,
line.
I'm stuck on something. I have to jump. I'm sorry.
Do it.
You said before prostate cancer, too much selenium.
Yeah.
And then you left that alone and went straight to thyroid and everything else. And I want to come back to that. Can you talk about the relationship between too much selenium and what that actually means and prostate cancer?
So that evidence is fairly weak, actually. It's mainly looking at population data. There's no studies where they fed a bunch of people, a bunch of selenium. It's more of an associative relationship. And we're talking about massive doses of selenium. Again, we're talking, 400 or 500 micrograms a day, and people who way over consume selenium, eating a pound of Brazil nuts a day kind of thing. The RDA is 55 micrograms. But up to 400 hasn't shown an adverse effect. It's more common. The more common manifestations are the hair loss and brittle nails and things like that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
So
Now you
I
can
love how
continue.
you jumped on that. He's like another female hormone problem.
Well,
Like, so we picked up on the prostate today.
Yeah. No, it's good.
But okay, so can we just explain to people what the goitrogens are before we move on, because we didn't kind of define that.
Right. So goitrogens are compounds that have been shown to interfere with the production of thyroid hormones. And so the main one people talk about are these thiocyanates and cruciferous vegetables. Another one that comes up sometimes are the flavonoids in soy. Actually, that's another one that is sometimes considered a goitrogen. And again, theoretically, there's some theoretic concerns that it may interfere with iodine uptake. However, once again, that there is no evidence that even 2-4 servings of soy a day adversely affects thyroid function. The kind of the normal consumption you would see, even someone who's consuming a lot of soy. And we know that consumption rates in that range actually can reduce your risk for breast cancer by about 30%. In men, it reduces the risk of prostate cancer, 20-30%, because prostate cancer is also a hormone dependent tumor. And we know that the phytoestrogens in these plants and soy weakly bind to the estrogen receptor and block the effect of estrogen. That's why it's felt to have an anti-cancer effect. So again, these are it's kind of gotten out there, and you get on the internet and you shouldn't eat soy, you've got thyroid problems. You shouldn't eat broccoli because you've got thyroid problems. Or shouldn't eat kale, and it's just not based in sound science. And the health benefits of both of those foods far outweigh any minuscule risk of a thyroid problem.
I know
Right.
this is not a soy episode. I get it. I just want to at least make sure that people understand that when you talk about soy, you're talking about minimally processed soy. You're talking about tempeh, edamame, maybe some minimally processed or soy milk that doesn't have any of the kind of sugars or flavors in them. So really in tofu as well. So we're not talking
Right.
about soy
Right.
isoflavones and things like that you find in the energy bars and
Right, not an ingredients in a packaged food. The
Right,
whole, the soy in the whole-ish food.
So
Whole
the block of
Polish.
tofu is okay.
Right.
And
Soy milk is okay, but past that, the soy protein isolate that you see in Boca burgers or something like that, the soy protein powder, that kind of stuff, you need to be careful with that. So, yeah, and like most foods, we want to eat it as close to the ground as it was grown. So,
And okay, so I get my GP thinks I'm crazy because I make her give me all the thyroid tests when I get my blood test. She's like, but you don't have, I'm like, I don't care. Just do it.
Yeah.
I'll pay for it. Just do it. And everything comes back right. So, and I eat a ton of soy and I eat a ton of cruciferous vegetables. So my thyroid's okay. We should be
Good.
okay. But when people think that their iron levels, when their iodine levels are low, do they say to their doctor, can you test my iodine? Is there a specific test that you request them to get?
So that's a great question. And the problem is iodine levels, the tissue iodine levels are not well reflected in blood or urine tests. So it's very difficult to assess iodine status. And then the other problem is that if you look at the range, so we monitor thyroid function by looking at the TSH level. So TSH is a hormone made by our pituitary gland, and it stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. So it, as our blood circulates to the pituitary gland, it detects is there enough thyroid hormone in the blood or not, and if there's not, it'll make more TSH to tell the thyroid to make more. If there's plenty there or too much, it'll stop making TSH. So there's an inverse relationship. But if you look at the normal range of TSH, the normal range is like 0.45 to 4.5, right? So pretty broad. And so sometimes it's kind of hard to discern, when people, especially when people are symptomatic, if it's iodine, if the iodine's a problem. This actually happened to me. I've been plant-based for a while, and a year or two, and all of a sudden I started to get brain fog, and just didn't feel fatigue. And it was really the symptoms of hypothyroidism, and had my blood work done, and everything was okay, but my TSH level was at the upper limit of normal. I did some reading and realized I'd had no iodine in my diet for a year or two, and added I used a kelp supplement. There's some Caryn's going to talk about some other ways to get iodine into your diet, but I started taking a kelp supplement because I was too lazy to do the things Caryn's going to talk about. And within a week or two, I felt better, but my thyroid number was at the upper limit of normal. So if I lived my whole life at 0.5 and now I'm at 3.5, right? I mean, that's a fairly significant difference. So in general, though, that's on my list of supplements maybe not supplements that, and it's not just people on a plant-based diet. I mean, everyone needs to ensure they have an adequate amount of iodine in their diet. You can use table salt, actually. The problem is that the amount of the 150, 1 teaspoon of table salt has 250 micrograms of iodine, which is on the high side, and 2,300 milligrams of sodium, which is definitely on the high side. So we're talking maybe 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt to meet your iodine requirements, which is right at your sodium. So there's no wiggle room. If you use salt in your cooking, not much other wiggle room for that, right? So It's probably better to get it, from other sources. And again, Caryn can talk about the best ways to get iodine in your diet.
Caryn, is this the way the Doc and Chef show goes? Like Jim just says, Caryn's going to talk about this, and then he just keeps rambling on, and then he says, Caryn's going to talk about.
Yeah. Oh, she gave me.
I can't even get a word in right now. He keeps talking.
She's filing her nails over there. So, okay, wait, hold on. Okay, I really want to get to Caryn because
Of course.
she's got the really important information. But Dr. Jim, you said that on your list of important supplements for plant-based people to take, and our listeners are going to break our doors down if I don't ask you what's that list before I promise we move on.
By the way, we couldn't have come back to that later, right?
Well, no, because
Socks says stop talking. She
didn't hear you.
I didn't wear them today. Obviously. So B12 is the most important one. Again, misconceptions about B12. B12 doesn't come from animals. It actually comes from soil, bacteria live in the soil. And in fact, most animals today have to be supplemented with B12 because they're not exposed to soil because they're in CAFOs, right? So the steak that you get to eat your B12 has been supplemented with B12 because they're not exposed to soil. We used to not have to worry about it because we got our food out of the dirt, we played in the dirt, we drank water that had bacteria in it. But because we have put so many pesticides and herbicides on our food, we have to scrub the dirt off, we polluted the water, killed the bacteria, we've lost that kind of natural source of B12. So I usually recommend 500 micrograms of B12. Probably doesn't matter if it's cyano or methylcobalamin. There's some theoretic concerns about one is more shelf stable, but I mean, I'm on a re-up. I get mailed from on a subscription every month or two, so I don't really worry about it. I don't even know which one I take actually. So that's probably the biggest one. I don't routinely supplement vitamin D. That's not because you're on a plant-based diet. It's because you don't get out in the sun as much. I monitor blood levels for that. And I think, especially in the northern latitudes, most people are a little B12, a little D deficient.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about the iodine. Some people, I also will supplement with an algae-based omega-3. You know, omega-3s are anti-inflammatory, omega-6s are inflammatory. Omega-6s come from meat and dairy primarily, but there's also omega-6s if you're using a lot of cooking oils and a lot of the more processed plant-based foods. And what you're looking for is a dietary ratio of about 3 to 1. That's pretty hard to do if you're using any oil, and if you're using oil. You can do it, but it's pretty hard. So especially patients who have some kind of chronic inflammatory issues, or if they're athletes or training a lot, I will sometimes add an algae-based omega-3. And that's really, that's my repertoire. I take a little turmeric supplement just because I train a lot, just as an anti-inflammatory. But as far as routine supplements, really the B12 is the one that everyone needs to take. And even if you're not plant-based, when you're over and you're getting into your 60s, it's currently recommended that you take a B12 supplement. But I do pay attention to vitamin D, omega-3s, iodine, you know, are the other ones that I talk about at least.
Yeah.
Did I miss
Awesome.
anything else?
No, those were the big ones, I think.
All right.
Is it
Well,
Karen's
time's
turn
up.
now?
It is time's up.
Kidding.
Karen, now we want to know.
Well, thank you both for
Where-
coming on the show.
Now we want to know what to do with this information. Where do we find our best sources? How do we make them palatable? How do we make it work in a day? Tell us all the things that you want us to know.
How do you apply that to your plate, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. So, talking about selenium, Jim was saying 400 micrograms is the upper limit, and it's pretty hard to do that on just, you know, doing that in a day, just in your daily diet. But he did mention Brazil nuts, and so those are going to be like anywhere between 70 and 90 micrograms, and recommended is 55. So really don't, at least with Brazil nuts, try not to go over 2, right? I have a container in my refrigerator and I'll take like 1 every other day, not just as a prescription. I just like Brazil nuts, but I know not to go over them. So good sources are going to be like, even pasta, enriched pasta. So if you like your pasta, go for it. Brown rice, baby bell mushrooms. It really is, it's widely found, selenium. So it's really not something that you really need to worry about. If you want to talk about iodine, I personally do use salt when I cook. I use it during the cooking process because it does help the flavors bloom. I don't top anything with salt because then you just taste salt. But I do like what salt does to food. Use a teeny tiny bit. If you don't want to use it, a really great source is going to be seaweed. And so what I will sometimes do is if I'm making like a chickpea tuna salad, mash everything up, and then I'll take a sheet of nori that you can find in any grocery store in your international aisle. If you're going to make sushi at home, so I'll take a sheet of that and I'll put it into either my coffee grinder or spice grinder and create a powder, and then just shake that part of that into the mixture to give it that sea flavor. So seaweed really
super
is
smart.
probably the best way to get your iodine.
Yeah. Or you could get do you use the kelp? Like it looks like
Dulse.
fish food, or dulse. It looks like fish food. Yeah.
Dulse, or yes, or kelp. Yeah, you can buy
Yeah.
those just in little shakers as well. Yeah. So
Right.
really either one.
And so when you say that you use salt for your cooking, are you using like Morton's table salt, or are you using Celtic salt or pink Himalayan salt?
I will use either. So if I'm at home, we have some Morton's. If I'm at the Center for Plant-Based Living, where I do cooking classes, I have some pink Himalayan salt. And honestly, I just have it. Like it's on rotation or subscription, I should say, from Amazon. And I get it like every 6 months or something. I don't know.
But are they supplementing? I heard that some brands are they supplementing the iodine into like the pink salts and things like the healthier salts?
The one that I have, no, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
and I, again, like, and when I cook, if I'm cooking for class, it's usually a large amount of people. It's a batch cook, right? So, and even
Mhm.
for here at the house, I'll batch cook. So I'm going to have to cook every single day. And it's a pinch. So if I'm feeding 20 people in a class, or I'm feeding, my husband and I for a week or whatever, it's just it's more for the chemical reaction of what it's doing to the food.
Right.
It's not for the salty flavor, because the food doesn't taste
Right.
salty. It's
So then
just
it's not for the supplementation
no.
either. Yeah,
Mm-mm.
right. It's not for the supplementation either. Any feedback on the Celtic salt versus the pink Himalayan salt? That's a big controversy right now too.
I think that from what I understand, and I think probably Jim can speak to this more, is that if it's less processed or it's coming from dirt that is more enriched, then you're going to get more enrichment from your salt. But if you're not using a whole lot anyway, like really, I think it's just a marketing thing.
Right.
Right. I mean, the is sodium, right? So the main issue is sodium, and most of us take too much sodium. Ideally we should be, the amount of sodium we actually need is 500 milligrams a day, something like that. Most people, if you stay less than 2,000, 1,500, you're probably okay. Above that, you start to run into problems. The big difference, my understanding, is the mineral content, depending on where the salt was harvested from. Some of it has more different kinds of minerals. From a health standpoint, I don't think it makes a big difference.
Heavy metals or something like
Yeah, I
that.
don't, not that I know of.
Okay.
There may be some nuances with that, but again, I think the amount of heavy metals and a little bit of, if you're just sprinkling a little bit on as a finishing salt, is
Right.
is not a big concern.
Got it. Perfect. Thanks.
One thing I would like to really drive home is the importance of cruciferous vegetables. Please do not be scared of them. It took me a while to really get into them, because I mean, personally, I don't like raw broccoli. I don't like a lot of raw vegetables I don't like. So I'll lightly steam, or, if I'm baking, or, put them on the grill or whatever. But this sulforaphane that Jim talked about is such a highly potent, it kind of science experiment that happens between these compounds, especially in broccoli and broccoli sprouts, that it really is such a cancer fighter. It reduces inflammation. It takes hold of toxins and pulls them out of your body. Researchers are doing a lot of homework on sulforaphane. I would encourage you to please not buy the supplement, but really just get the whole food, because then you're getting all those other phytochemicals, phytonutrients. But the one thing that one of the main cruciferous vegetable that holds so much sulforaphane, or has the ability to produce it, I should say, is broccoli. And when you bring it home from the grocery store, or your farmers, or wherever you get it, please, when you bring it home, chop it up. If you think you're just going to, put it into salads or whatever, but give it some hard chops, put it back in the container, and then put it back in the refrigerator, because you need about 45 minutes for that sulforaphane to be produced. And then once it is produced, then it stays. Okay. Then you have those cancer fighting chemicals there. They do not go anywhere. So if you just pull it out from the refrigerator before dinner, make sure you have about 45 minutes at least, and then cut it. But I always tell people, if it's in your grocery bag, bring it home, chop it up, put it in the fridge, because those compounds are not lost. Now, if it's a crazy night and you're like, oh shoot, I was going to make a soup, or I was going to put it in a salad or whatever, you chop it up and then you eat it. Okay, fine. It's still very, very good for you. You're just not getting those compounds. So to get the biggest nutrition bang for your buck and getting that sulforaphane, either do what Dr. Greger says, the hack and hold, I like to call chop and stop, whatever, doesn't matter, but do it. Now, if you want an even bigger bang for your nutrition buck, I would say grow your own broccoli sprouts. They tend to be very, I don't know what the word is, bitter, but they have some heat to them. If you buy them for the grocery store, I've found, maybe because they sit there for a couple days, but if you grow your own, it just, like, for pennies by the cup. They're a lot more mild, and you don't have to cut them. You just put them on your salads, or in your sandwiches or wraps or whatever. and you only need just like a half a cup, maybe not even that much, but the amount of sulforaphane that is produced and just naturally in those broccoli sprouts is incredible. I mean, you want to talk about, I don't like to say food is medicine, because I don't really believe that, because I believe medicine is medicine and food is food. They can react, they can cross over, but one is not the other, just my own little thing. But it really does. It really, really is a powerhouse, sulforaphane.
If you're buying the broccoli already cut up in those bags and not the fresh whole thing, do you still chop them up when you bring them home, or they're already cut up and that's enough?
Great question. I still like to cut it up, because I think that those florets are too big for anything really. But yes, I will still cut them up, wash it off, cut it off, and then cut them up, and then put them in my own container in the fridge.
Okay. So if somebody hasn't done it in advance, they bring home their broccoli stock, they take it out of the fridge, chop it up, and then if they're going to steam it or do whatever they do, just cook the rest of the meal and do that last. So it's sat on the counter for half an hour,
Exactly.
45 minutes, and then you're good to go if you haven't done that in advance.
Yes, and also eat those stalks. The stalk provides even more sulforaphane than the floret, and I mean, rightfully so. It's more dense, right?
Right.
Than a floret.
I cut off I find the edge is really thick of the stalk. Is that wrong? Should I be eating it?
You know what? If it's not palatable to you, I want you to enjoy your food. So scrap that if you want to scrap that.
But if I can make it palatable, eat it.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
I could hear one of our listeners asking this question, so I'll ask for them. Is the method of preparation of these foods impact the amount of minerals that we're going to consume from these foods? So like cooking it a certain way, does that matter?
Well, so in Jim and I come across that question pretty often, like raw versus cooked. What are you gaining? What are you losing? I think, the more you cook broccoli, you probably will lose, so steaming, actually, lightly steaming is preferable, because it's not hitting the heat that long, right? And so even though the sulforaphane is already made, if you've waited 45 minutes, that's fine, that's saved. But the other phytonutrients, will they be impacted? Probably so. So do try to do a light steam just until it's bright green. And I mean, I always suggest that to people who are adopting a plant-based diet anyway, because raw cruciferous vegetables can give you kind of, some gas and some bloating. So steam it, and it's a lot easier on the gut. But I don't know what else would be really impacted. I mean, if you're going to grill it for a long time, as opposed to steaming it for 3 minutes, more nutrients will be retained if you're lightly steaming it.
And I think the key is, you don't want to boil it, right? I mean, that you can boil the nutrients out. Anyway, what's interesting, by the way, so remember that these healthy compounds, like the sulforaphane, these are these plants' natural mechanism to protect itself were it to get damaged. So they don't get created to break the cell wall, because when you break the cell wall of a plant, that sets it up for infection from bacteria and viruses, just like us. So these are the plant's natural kind of anti-inflammatory protection for itself. So you have to damage the cell wall to create the compounds. Now, what's interesting about these cruciferous vegetables, Caryn kind of alluded to this. So when you chop it, it activates an enzyme called myrosinase, and that's actually what creates the sulforaphane. If you cook the broccoli first, though, before you cut it up, the heating of the broccoli deactivates the myrosinase, right? So you don't want to steam it and then chop it. So sometimes, people talk about frozen vegetables, right? So frozen vegetables in general are great, but oftentimes the frozen broccoli is blanched first, right? So it deactivates the myrosinase, right?
Interesting.
But
still better than not eating broccoli at all.
Trick you can use to restore myrosinase, and Caryn is going to tell us what that is.
So if you have some added myrosinase around your kitchen, you can reactivate the whole sulforaphane process. And that would be, actually, what I like to use is mustard powder, because mustard is a cruciferous vegetable. You can get mustard seeds that have not been heated or cooked or anything. from the plant. They ground it up, and that is mustard powder. If you add just a little bit of mustard powder, which has not been heated or anything, add that to your cooked broccoli that maybe you didn't get to quite in time, then sulforaphane will magically happen.
Wow.
Cool.
Oh, super interesting. So I don't like to admit that I was wrong very often, but
Hard.
but over the years, I've always eaten the broccoli stalk and given the kids and Adam I call it the mango syndrome. Like when you give the kids the really like good, delicious parts of the mango, and then the mother's there trying to get all the little pieces of mango out of the, out of the peel
Yeah.
and off the pit, and then it gets stuck in your teeth. And right, like I've been giving the best parts to my kids, and I've been, not that I'm suffering through it, but like I've been like, okay, I can deal with this. I'll just eat the broccoli stalks. I've actually been doing it backwards. I can't stop thinking that.
I like
I'm
the
so
stalks.
upset. I love the stalks, but I was sacrificing my broccoli florets
It's okay, we'll survive.
for you guys.
Thank you.
And really,
But-
I was doing them a disservice.
Thank you.
Mother of the year here.
Right? So
But I still do eat the little pieces of the mango.
So just as an aside, one thing you can do with the broccoli stalks is you can pickle them. You can lacto-ferment them on your counter, right?
Oh, cool.
Make a brine, with, you just want to be sure there's no chlorine in it. So just still water, make a brine, throw the stalks in there, and whatever kind of spices you want, and cover it up. In a few days, it'll start to bubble, and you can make pickles out of them.
Can I mix it with turnips?
Can.
You like the pickled
Mix it with-
turnips,
You can,
right?
mix it- you can put hot peppers in there, you can put garlic in there, you can put red onion in there, but you can actually lacto-ferment them on your tabletop and turn them into pickles. It's a great, then you're getting, not only are you getting the fiber and the sulforaphanes, you're getting those healthy microbes
the-
for your gut.
The fermented food.
That's
Yeah.
an easy way to kind of use broccoli stalks if you don't want to eat them.
You say easy. Are you the one making that?
Yeah, it's incredibly
house?
easy,
Yeah.
actually. I used to think it was a big it's incredibly easy to lacto ferment whatever you want to.
Just did it with some red onions a few weeks ago. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
super
Those
literally,
easy.
red onions are the best.
the hard part is making the brine, which takes like 10 minutes and letting it cool. And that's really the
Yeah.
only.
So we're talking up all these cruciferous vegetables and all these minerals that are so good for us. Is there anyone that these foods might not be good for?
No. Not
allergic
that
to
I
it.
can think of. Not, I mean, really, the answer is no. Not these particular foods. The other place this comes up with the cooking and all is when we talk about oxalates, right? That comes up a lot too. So oxalates, people with kidney stones, oxalate kidney stones might need to be careful. But if you cook but that's the opposite problem. So if you cook spinach or chard, you take about 80% of the oxalates out.
Right.
So that's a situation where you do want to purposely remove some of the Newton,
Or if they're eating meat, probably if they eliminate the meat, they'd be okay eating those cooked,
right, exactly.
right?
So-
And what about somebody who's got hyperthyroidism?
No, that doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay.
Matter.
Yeah. Good
Cool.
question. Yeah. All right.
This is
So,
cool.
Caryn, what should somebody just eat next? Like what's a great little meal to help them kind of cover these areas and get what they need? What do you recommend? People who are hungry now after this conversation, what should they go eat?
Me too. What I've been doing lately is, just because it's super quick, and who has time anymore, is I've just been making wraps. So I make my own hummus. I have some pickled cabbage, red cabbage in the refrigerator. I do grow my own sprouts. And whatever else I can put in there, I put some hot sauce on there too. But I kitchen sink my wraps, to be honest with you. So, and it's real easy. It's fast to eat, easy to eat. And I know that I'm getting a lot of different nutrients inside of that wrap.
We throw a little sunflower seed on it. There's your selenium, right? So, yeah, it's great.
Amazing.
I mean, it's
Amazing.
how great nature is, right? So, think about something like iron, right? So iron, we need iron. The iron in plants is harder for us to absorb, but the foods that have iron, you put some spinach on a wrap, and you put in some hummus, has some iron, and then you put some bell peppers, which have vitamin C to help us absorb the iron. So these foods, that's this symphony of nutrients that come when we eat a wide variety of whole foods. And again, it's to the point we made earlier. It's really, when we eat these whole foods, we're getting, we eat that rainbow every day, and we're getting everything we need to thrive, and be healthy and prevent these chronic diseases. And I think people way overcomplicate this stuff. I mean, how hard is it to make a healthy wrap with hummus and cucumbers and bell peppers and broccoli sprouts and sprinkle a few sunflower seeds? It was making me hungry, right? I mean, it's amazing. And you're getting iron, you're getting vitamin C, you're getting sulforaphanes, you're getting selenium, you're getting zinc. I mean, the list goes on. Fiber, the list goes, protein, the list goes on and on. So that's the beauty of all.
I think it just becomes difficult for people when they're being told no
Yes.
selenium, no oxalates, no all these things, and then they don't know what to eat and they don't know what's right. Some grungy doctor out there is giving misinformation or whatever it is. So thank you so much for setting the record straight, making us hungry for the right things. You've literally turned broccoli on its head for me today.
Oh, good.
We're so happy that you could be here.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of topics we could talk about, and it's a great combination of having a doc and a chef in the room to be able to do that. So I think the show is a great idea. And why don't you tell us where people could find you and watch the show or connect with you if they want to get some more information?
Yeah, they can go to thedocandchef.com, and that's where we keep all of our past videos, episodes. We're also on YouTube. And then there's also in the show notes of every single episode, there's lots of links, including a link to Jim's scientifically backed blog post. So it was very important to us. It still is very important to us that everything that comes out of our mouths in those episodes are scientifically backed. And so Jim provides the citations, the footnotes, for everything in the correlating blog posts.
Yeah, that's great. Jim,
Amazing.
anything to add? I mean,
No,
Caryn talked the whole time, so
yeah, I know. I could barely get a word in. No, it's great. And if people want to check out the Center for Plant-Based Living, Caryn has a culinary education center, and where she teaches people, brings people together around food, teaches them healthy recipes and how to think about getting all these plants on your plate. So the Doc and Chef actually lives at the Center for Plant-Based Living, and so check that out as well. It's a great resource, and we're doing live Doc and Chef shows all over. We're going to be in Vancouver this coming this next week, and it's been great fun, and we've had really good feedback for what we've been doing, because it is kind of a unique. We have, as you can tell, kind of a interesting interaction, let's just say.
it's a very fun dynamic, a good energy, and we look forward to watching more of those shows and getting to know you better through them and sharing it with our audience. We'll put the links at planttrainers.com. And thank you both so much for being here on the Plant Trainers podcast.
This was great fun. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.